Texas is now the number one team in the country for the first time since 2008 after beating UTSA 56-7 in the first night game of the year for the Longhorns.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis, your host. Tony Monk, of course, for Monday's episode, joining us once again from Spot On Sports. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. I know you're going to need that on a Monday. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. Also, if you are watching on YouTube, you can see this at the bottom of the screen. If you're on audio, I will just tell you, yes, it is my birthday. I am 31 today. Grateful to have been doing this since 2022. So since I was 28, right? Then I turned 29, then 30, then 31. So been doing this since I was 28. I'm now 31. Of course, thankful for you all. Drop a comment, tell me happy birthday, please, something like that. But anyway, like I said, today, Texas beat UTSA 56-7. So we're going to be talking about that in the first segment. In the second segment, Quinn's injury, the oblique strain, right? What is our concern level going into next week, but just period, with Quinn being injured and Arch Manning now being our starting quarterback for the foreseeable future. And then the last segment, the players of the game. Of course, we got to highlight some of our favorite performances from the UTSA game. All of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, Tony, before you get into your UTSA game reactions, I just have to say I was at the game. Game was on ESPN. It was just a really dope experience. I just want to shout out CDC and everybody involved. They've done such a good job just with the preparation of us going into the SEC, of really building and really enhancing the night game experience at DKR, right? And so, the game started at 6. Of course, it was super hot. The sun was beaming, you know what I mean? But then the sun went down. The light show started coming on at DKR, and then, I mean, the team gave us plenty to cheer about. But like I said, I just wanted to really, give a shout out to CDC and talk about how electric the night game experience at DKR has really become. So I just had to throw that in there for sure. And I know all 100,000 people that were there enjoyed it as well. Tony, what were your thoughts? What were your biggest takeaways from, Texas victory against UTSA this past Saturday?
Well, Texas certainly gave us a host of things to take home, to write home about, to, question, more of your life about as far as the remainder of the season. But, at least with some of the good points, it was what this offense was able to do when they did lose their starting quarterback. And you could hear a bit of the John, when you was there, probably a little bit of the air probably left the stadium because just the magnitude.
It ain't leave for that long. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, of course not. Of course not.
Because Arch Manning, I'll say this, like, man, like, I've been there for Bijan and a whole bunch of players, bro. That stadium gets loud when Arch comes in. So, I mean, yeah, it was, there was a collective gasp when Quinn went down. But I mean, the two plays, like about 5 minutes later when Arch came in, that stadium was rocking like it was an earthquake. You know what I'm saying? So
at least Quinn got his, oh my God, I lost my starting quarterback respect for at least a couple of seconds when he went down. And I think the biggest part was now you were able to watch Arch Manning for an extended period of time in a game, at least at the point that Ewers went down, it still mattered. And I think for him, obviously, boom, first play he gets in, all right, touchdown. And he's like, okay, now the stadium totally forgets that Quinn Ewers actually got hurt. And and we're riding the Arch train. Here we go. And so what I thought was most interesting, and I got two things here, was how the offense began to respond the following drives, because they didn't do as well. Like, they were still moving the ball here and there, but you can see, okay, in extended work, Arch is prone. He is human, and he will make some mistakes here and there. And I think, to UTSA's credit, they got after them a little bit today. I think the line didn't have their best day. And then I guess you can say, well, maybe there's the high from beating Michigan last week, and usually teams do tend to kind of come down just a tad bit after they exceed expectations against elite level of play. And so for Texas, going against UTSA, I thought again, for offensive line, who we spoke very well about last week, John. Again, just wasn't their best day at the office. Obviously, they had the injury to Banks that happened for a little bit, even though he was kind of able to come back in. But I think that may be a little bit of a testament to them kind of getting out the Ewers a little bit. And then obviously Arch Manning experienced a little bit of that. The biggest thing was the injury bug that was just trying its best to kind of nitpick at this Texas team. And you can see that kind of happened at the running back position. Obviously, with guys like Trey Wisner missing a significant time in that game. Jaden Blue was already hurt, so he missed that game entirely. But I did like their running back stepping in, Gibson. I thought he did very good. I think it speaks to the type of depth that Texas does have at the position. And then one of the first week, John, we was talking, I wanted to see who in this receiver room could really stand out in those moments. And you end up getting multiple guys, that being Jonte Cook, who they probably end up saying, okay, he has that red zone ability to be able to get open, to be able to score touchdowns and, in those clutch situations. And then, with Isaiah Bond and how he was kind of able to really break away. Ryan Wingo, the true freshman, everybody's loving him right now. And so I think you got a host of guys, at least in that receiver room, that can take over at any time. And I really wanted to see that kind of that breakout each day from Isaiah Bond, especially just what happens when he's able to let loose. And all of these things transpired during the point of the game where it was rather close, and even after Ewers went down. So tough day for the offense, but very good. Very good. I'm saying tough is just far as some things, again, with blocking, having to fight through that injury bug and everything, but just very good for them still being able to wheel past a team just like UTSA, following up a team like Michigan.
Yeah. So when I look at, my takeaways, I'm gonna say that, I was really impressed with, or I guess I have been, not just, in the UTSA game, but really impressed with Isaiah Bond's maturation as a number one wide receiver. I think coming over from Alabama, he had 668 yards last year. A lot of the way that they used him was a lot of the deep passes. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of, his catches and things were, coming down the field, and he was kind of labeled, just like we saw with Xavier Worthy, as a speed wide receiver. But could he come in and replace X, come in and replace Worthy as that number one wide receiver and make all types of catches, make all types of plays for the Texas football team? And I think we've seen that over the last 2 weeks. Obviously, the first drive against Michigan, right, where they back you up, I think it's 3rd and 13, and then Quinn Ewers just kind of drops the ball, in between two defenders, and Isaiah Bond lays out and makes that 33-yard catch. That was a huge catch on that first drive. Even though Texas didn't score, I thought the offense really settled down in that moment. So that's a huge catch from your number one wide receiver. Then you see in this game, the tough catch on the inside slant for the first touchdown of the UTSA game. That was a contested catch. He showed physicality when he was catching those screens. He was breaking tackles, picking up huge yards after the catch. And then the elite speed, which he's known for, right? When he catches that screen from Arch Manning in the second half and just takes the ball 50 yards for a touchdown without even being touched. So I just think from, Isaiah Bond over the last 2 games, because the first 2 games he really didn't get off, right? Only 61 yards and then 51 yards, right? But, over the last couple of games, we've seen the route running and the, elusiveness after the catch, the physicality, breaking tackles, contested catches. He's doing it all, right? Really showing that he is the number one wide receiver for this offense, regardless if it's Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning back there throwing the ball. Second thing I want to talk about is Texas hasn't really gotten any explosive plays from their running backs this year, but they've been able to supplement it in other ways. So 2 crazy stats, right, for, Tony and just everybody that's listening. Texas running backs only have 2 carries of 20-plus yards this season on 86 running back carries. I'm going to say that again. 86 running back carries this season, only 2 of them have gone for 20-plus yards. One by Jared Gibson and one by Colin Page. Texas' 3 longest carries this season are not by running backs. 67-yard touchdown run by Arch Manning, 55-yard run by Ryan Wingo, and then a 25-yard run by Isaiah Bond, right? So 28% of the Longhorns rushing yards have come on just those 3 plays, all right? I'll say that again. 28% of the Longhorns rushing yards this season have come on 3 plays by Arch Manning, Ryan Wingo, and Isaiah Bond. I think that's crazy, right? And so obviously Jaden Blue didn't play in this game. I think eventually we'll see, more holes open up for our running backs. They'll be able to, make those bigger plays, those more explosive plays, that'll certainly help the offense. But Sark has done a really good job of finding ways, right, to, sustain this run game and, kind of boost this run game, even when our running backs haven't had those big explosive plays we're used to seeing from guys like, Roshan, Jonathan Brooks, and Bijan Robinson. When Arch Manning can run for 67, when Ryan Wingo can run for 55, when you can give it to Isaiah Bond and he can get you 25 yards, you don't necessarily need your running backs to go crazy with those big gains all the time. And then the last thing is making predictions are hard, right? On the Friday episode, I had my 5 bold predictions and only one of them came true. Now, somebody did remind me on Twitter that a stat change may be coming, so maybe 2 of them might be right, but nonetheless, this is why Vegas has all the money. You know what I mean? This is why Vegas has all the tall buildings and why it looks so grand. This is why Caesar's Palace is so live. You know what I mean? Because it's really hard for us to make these predictions, right? So I had Jared Gibson going over 100 yards. That obviously did not happen. I had the team rushing for 250 yards. I didn't know Arch and Quinn were just going to explode and throw for over 400, right? So the team did not right place. 250 yards. They only rushed for, I think, 187. Wingo did lead the team in receiving. I said Ryan Wingo would lead the team in receiving. He did. Shout out that 75-yard catch where they just left him wide open. I said Texas would get 4+ sacks. They only got 3. And then I said Texas would shut out UTSA. And they had that one bad play where they let the running back, just gash him for a touchdown. That's the only time they scored. Otherwise, I would have been right about the shutout. But nonetheless, great performance from this Texas football team. Tony said, maybe there were times where, the offensive line could have been better. At this point, when you win 56-7, you're just nitpicking. You know what I mean? Like you're just, finding things to nitpick. But nonetheless, like I said, really good stuff from this Texas football team. But we do have to address, the elephant or, the Longhorn in the room, which is Quinn Ewers now, week to week with an oblique injury. What is our level of concern moving forward, with QB1 dealing with this type of injury? After a quick word from our sponsors, of course. All right, today's episode of Locked On Longhorns brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com. Download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Tony. So like I said, strained abdomen, strained oblique for Quinn Ewers. It was kind of weird, being in the stadium. Of course, like when you're watching it at home on ESPN, you get like up to the minute updates. They're talking to the sideline reporter, you know what I mean? Like it's like you find out pretty quickly what's going on. But it's like we're in the stadium and I see him hand the ball off, and I'm like, oh, okay, Trey Wisner picked up like 3-4 yards, whatever. And then we see Quinn on the ground and he just looked dead. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like Quinn just on the ground, just
yeah.
out, and we all like, what's going, you know what I'm saying? Like, did he get hit late? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what happened? Like, and then we're all just trying to speculate, like, what could be wrong with Quinn, and then eventually we found out, strained abdomen, oblique. Looked like it happened a few plays before he, went out. Like, he got touched, and kind of, if you're watching on YouTube, kind of did that little weird thing where your side hurting really bad, and then he wasn't contacted the next 2 plays, but then ultimately left the game and then came back in street clothes in the second half. They are saying that the injury is not as bad as they thought it would be. He is week to week with the strained oblique, likely won't play against ULM. We'll see after that. But, what are your thoughts on, quarterback 1 being hurt? And, I guess what is your level of concern moving forward regarding this injury for Texas?
I have 2 different levels of concern, John. One for Texas, I would give it about a 6. Losing your starting quarterback, the guy that has the experience, is still a thing, regardless of the name behind the jersey of the backup quarterback behind him. Let's be honest. Quinn Ewers was in the running for the Heisman. Quinn Ewers was the one that led this team to the playoffs last year. Quinn Ewers has been the guy for this Texas team for what has been the past couple of years. And if that guy goes down, you're still presented with issues, especially in a year where you are trying to cement yourself in the SEC. So I do want Texas fans to take this with a little bit of seriousness. Yes, I know it's super exciting to have Arch finally stepping in, at least for a game or 2 or 3 or whatever the case is going to be. But you still got some key games in this time frame. Obviously, you got Georgia coming up in a couple of weeks. You wonder if Quinn Ewers will even be there back in that stretch of time. They got Monroe next week, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, John. But you got a nice little test, and then Mississippi State is, I believe, is after that. So there's another really good test right there for Arch to see, can he take a team in a complete 4-quarter game and really win and not have any issues, or the offense doesn't miss a beat or any of those things. So just a 6, just for what Texas is having to go through. Again, Arch is very, very good. So I think he's going to be able to fit in very well. Sark is going to scheme. He's going to be able to scheme around his backup quarterback because that's what you're supposed to do. He's still very young, so you want to protect him in some ways. I don't expect Texas to go all out, but I expect the extensions of what they're trying to use for their run fits and the run scheme to be able to alleviate some of the pressure on him. Obviously, with a lot of RPOs and screens with Ryan Wingo and what they can do with Isaiah Bond, I think you'll see a lot of the other guys really starting to get more into the mix than Ewers kind of being the one to wield them on his arm. My next level of concern is for Ewers himself. John, how many years has it been now since this has been a Quinn Ewers injury?
It's now 3 straight years that he would miss time. 3 straight years as a starter that he would miss time, or is it 4?
I believe, yeah, this is 3. I think what was the last?
Oh yeah, this would be 4 because it would be his junior year of high school, and then all 3 years he's been a starter at Texas. He would have missed time due to injury, so it's 4 straight seasons now. Yeah.
Now we're developing the moniker of hurt guy for Quinn Ewers, and that's a thing where you say, okay, even when this young man returns, this is still an area of concern for Texas. Because what happens, for Ewers if he goes down for real? Not to mention, Ewers is back as a starter for the Texas Longhorns for a lot of those reasons. For injuries, not having a full slate of game to show that he is an NFL caliber quarterback, and which is pulled back the amount of time for Arch to kind of step in and take the reins. And so for a guy like him, it's easy for me to have such a high level of concern. I would probably give that about a good 7 to 8 for Ewers because, we're in the SEC. We're in a much higher level of play. And again, teams like Georgia on the list and teams, that actually play some pretty good defense on it. The playoffs are a much larger slate this time around. We have a lot more games to play. And so it's if Ewers is just good for the long haul. Obviously, the answer now is no because he's going to be missing a couple of games. But I think there's a level of concern around everywhere. Again, this Texas team is very, very good. I don't want to dive away too far from the Ewers thing, but I think injuries as a whole could be something that you kind of want to look at more when it comes to this Texas team and just not hope that it doesn't become something that's too apparent as they go along this season.
Yeah. So, when I look at it, like I said, Quinn Ewers week to week, when you look at the next 3 weeks for the Longhorns, I think, your major priority is just trying to make sure you can have him healthy for that 2-week stretch where you play Oklahoma and then Georgia, right? So Georgia would be October 19th. Oklahoma would be October 12th, right? So you have about a month until that time to make sure that Quinn Ewers can be as healthy as possible. I know with the abdomen and the oblique strain, they did say it's not as serious as, they initially thought. So, maybe it's lingering at that point. Maybe he's 100% healthy by that point. I do think he'll be healthy enough to play football at a high level. And then you can just hope you keep him upright enough or, keep him, I guess, unscathed enough to where, it doesn't aggravate or get worse at any point throughout the season. When you look at it, the next 3 weeks for the Texas Longhorns, ULM at home, I know Tony said that's going to be a test. I don't know what type of test, you know what I mean? But Texas should be able to beat ULM even with Arch Manning by 40, plus points. Then you got Mississippi State at home the week after that. Look, Mississippi State just lost to Toledo on Saturday, right? I know they're an SEC team. And so, you do have to, go in there and you still got to beat them, and that could be a tough game, especially with your backup quarterback.
I didn't say LA Monroe was the test. I said he has some tests in the next couple of weeks before Ewers gets back. So Texas,
right.
Let's be clear on that.
Right. So, like I said, Mississippi State, that is an SEC team. They did just lose to Toledo. Obviously it's going to be a tougher challenge with Arch Manning, but with this Texas team and the amount of talent they have on offense and defense, the game at home, it's going to be rocking for the first SEC game for Texas. That definitely should be a game that Texas is still able to take care of, even with Arch Manning. And then you have the bye week after that, right? Especially with Quinn Ewers going down right now. What a perfectly timed bye week to give him another week to heal up and kind of be ready for that Oklahoma game. So I think really, like I said, just your only focus right now. I think Texas can go 2-0 without him. They certainly are going to beat ULM, and they should beat Mississippi State without him. So then it comes down to, can you get him healthy enough by October 12th to go out there and play his best football against Oklahoma, and then the next week against Georgia, now the number 2 team in the country. And like Tony said, Quinn's track record showed us that we had to be, ready for this type of possibility. You know what I mean? We had to be ready for him potentially missing games. We saw his junior year of high school, the sports hernia, right? And then 2022, the shoulder against Alabama. Then last year, I believe it was the shoulder again or something, dealing with the arm.
Injured shoulder.
Yeah, against Houston, right? And then, now with the strained oblique, right? And so obviously Sark, knew this was a possibility. And I think Texas is probably better equipped than almost any team in the nation to have to go to their backup in a spot like this. When you do have a, player like Arch Manning who's able to step in and score 5 touchdowns like he did in that manner against UTSA. So as long as you can get Quinn back, healthy or, 80 to 90% by the Oklahoma game, I think you'll be fine. And, Texas still has everything they want to do in front of them. Quick word from our sponsors, and then we get into the players of the game. Players and units we thought showed out against UTSA. Sorry, I did that wrong. But today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot to stay alert to watch all your favorite games, or if you stayed up late to see that intense overtime game, take a 5 Hour Energy shot in the morning so you can start your day. With 0 sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5 Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There is a flavor for everyone. Try them all. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. All right, Tony, who were your players of the game or players that stood out to you against UTSA?
I was finally able to say Arch Manning's name when he stepped in, because he deserves to be mentioned on this list. I don't care if you had him on your list, John. I'm taking it from him. Yes, he's the most easiest player to say, and he's the funnest player to say. But yes, Arch Manning stepped in, man. Had a really good day, 9 of 12, 220 yards passing, 4 TDs. Now that I'm done glazing him, I can actually move on to the other guys on the list. Again, I really love what Isaiah Bond was able to really do, really flash today. Himself, along with got Jonte Cook. Again, I have Ryan Wingo, just those 3 receivers actually being able to kind of take over the game, really able to produce a lot of points for this offense. Shout out to the defense. On defense side of the ball, they weren't really able to get sacks on Michigan last week. But, you got some guys that really stepped up and was able to answer that call. The linebackers, Colin Simmons, LaFau, Colton Vasek. Those guys stepping up, getting some good sacks for this team. Shout out to the running back, Jared Gibson, man. Stepped up when, Texas has been down running back since the start of our season nearly. And at one point into the first quarter, they're down almost 4. And for Jared Gibson to kind of come in, step in, and really produce some good work for this team while they found, different identities for their running game on that day, I thought that was really good. So those are my players of the game.
Yeah, so Tony just mentioned over 10 players, you know what I mean? So there's a chance that he had mentioned who I have written down. I didn't write down Arch Manning because obviously I knew you would talk about Arch and I was going to let you go first, but of course he would be on everybody's list of players of the game. I really just wanted to go back to Isaiah Bond. You know what I mean? I can't, just make up anything off the top of my head. I got to go with who I wrote down. So, I want to go back to Isaiah Bond, 5 catches for 103 yards and 2 touchdowns. But it just goes back to everything I said in the first segment. You know what I mean? Like I said, I really loved the physicality he showed. You know what I mean? Like he was getting tackled out of bounds, or not even getting tackled, but he would get hit, and he would when wide receivers get hit, or offensive players get hit, but they don't get tackled and they just kind of look down at the defender like that's all you got. You know what I mean? I saw him do that multiple times, in his 5 catches. The tough catch, in the end zone on the RPO, that was a contested catch. He went out and got that one. The 51-yard catch on the screen where he didn't even get touched and just took that to the end zone and showed that speed. Like I said, he just really looked like a number one wide receiver and did so much for this offense on Saturday. Jonte Cook, I want to give him some love. Jonte Cook, as a true freshman last season, was our number 4 wide receiver, right? And you looked at it, you looked at the landscape, and you said, oh, okay, he should be our number 1 going into next season with Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, and Adonai Mitchell entering in the draft, right? And then you look up, and Jonte Cook is still wide receiver 4, maybe even wide receiver 5. That's got to be tough for a player like him who's been dominant at every level up until this point, right? Dominant at DeSoto, and it just felt like inevitably he would be the number 1 wide receiver at the University of Texas. It just hasn't worked out that way, right? But he's kept his head down, kept working, and I love that he got his moment in this game, being able to score 2 touchdowns against UTSA. Like I said, even though a true freshman has jumped him in the depth chart. With Ryan Wingo coming in, it's got to be tough for a player like Jonte Cook, but thus far, based on what I've seen, he's handled it really well, and I'm glad he got his moment, got to shine twice in the end zone on Saturday. And then Colin Simmons, right? He's just been special. Really from day one, as a 5-star true freshman, came in 6 tackles, 4 solo tackles as a defensive lineman, right? So, talk about just pursuit and getting to the ball carrier, 1 sack and 2 tackles for loss. He was absolutely exceptional. Highest graded defensive player against Michigan. I think he was the highest graded player on the team, actually. And then he was one of the best players on defense against UTSA as well. So it's something me and Tony have talked about a bunch of times. He's mentioned Jared Gibson and Ryan Wingo a bunch. When you have true freshmen that can come into the number 1 now team in the country and produce at a high level, right? Colin Simmons leads this team in sacks. Jared Gibson leads this team in rushing, right? And then Ryan Wingo is the 2nd leading wide receiver on the team, right? So, when you look at it, these 3 true freshmen have been stalwarts for you on the number 1 team in the country. It's just absolutely exceptional. So 56-7, everybody who played damn near could have been a player of the game. You know what I mean? But those are just some people
we nitpicking at this point, huh?
Yeah, for sure. So those are just some people we wanted to highlight. As always, thank you for, tuning in to another episode of Locked On Longhorns. Thank you for all the birthday love. I really appreciate it. Hopefully I can make it to 32 years old on Locked On Longhorns as well. Hook 'em. Peace. Oh, so many buttons.